I really wanted to say a little something historic about King Solomon before I started to go into all of this metaphoric, traditional, legendary stuff. So I started to investigate King Solomon. Trust me, Ryan, I just wanted a paragraph.
And you ended up with the whole book.
Yes. I just wanted a paragraph about the historical King Solomon. Long story short, I could not find one scrap of historical evidence for the existence of King Solomon. I could not find one scrap of historical evidence for the existence of King Solomon's temple. I found tons of historical evidence about what was going on in that Jerusalem area during those years that King Solomon was supposed to exist, and it had nothing to do with King Solomon or even a culture of people called ancient Israel. There was no scrap of evidence for David, King David. There was no scrap, no, in an area that has had archaeological excavations for thousands of years, where they know how many onions they paid the builders of the pyramids, where we've got belt buckles and condom wrappers from Ramses the First, you know. There is not one thing, there's not one chariot wheel, there's not one scrap there's not one belt buckle for an army that supposedly had conquered Egypt and all the way up to Babylon. There was no evidence for ancient Israel.
So what does that exactly mean then, Lon?
That means that the entire Bible is historically neutralized.
It's kind of like mythology allegories historicized.
Right. And the idea, that it's not to say that there wasn't a thriving Jewish religion around 200 BC. The Hasmoneans, who we know as the Maccabees, were it was already going. There was this a thriving sacrificial religion going on there. But those people didn't even come back as a unified people until about 530 BC.
So maybe the Bible should be printed now with a little sticker on the front that says, kind of like a movie or a book is nowadays, based on somewhat historical fact, because some of it's realistic and some of it's just made up.
The story of ancient Israel was created in the 6th century BC. It was created then. There was no Moses. There was no, or at least the Cecil B. DeMille biblical King James idea of Moses and of Abraham and all of that. That was all so incredibly modern. Our grandparents could almost remember when they made this stuff up.
Well, I know a lot of this, though, goes back into cultures such as in Sumer, the stories of the Ark, for example, and the flood. Those stories go back.
Absolutely. And as a matter of fact, the very same people and chroniclers that were responsible for writing the Bible were trying to capture about 12 small tribal people's word-of-mouth legends of the creation, Okay, but the Exodus was not from Egypt. The Exodus was really talking about the relocation of the various regional tribes that Nebuchadnezzar had captured and brought their royalty back to Babylon. And then when Cyrus took over, he said, he said, you got to get these people out of here, you know. And they weren't one people; they were like 12 people, and it was literally a matter of Zerubbabel, or the guy who we know as Ezra, going to Cyrus and saying, look, we can rid you of all of these people Nebuchadnezzar brought into Babylonian eyes. I can take them all away. I can take all 12 of these little groups away, get them out of your hair. I can convince them they are one people, and just give me a little land somewhere where I can take them, and I can convince them that they're going home to where their ancestors came from. And that's exactly what appears to have happened. About 535 BC, they literally invented the religion, invented the culture, and then invented the Pentateuch, the 5 books of Moses, right then. Egyptians didn't own slaves, okay? The Egyptian myth was literally a retelling of the Babylonian myth. That was something that everyone in that relocation wave could understand, because their generation had been plucked up from their various areas and taken to Babylon. The story of a more ancient Exodus was something that they could identify with. That story of the Moses and everything else, that story was written around 500 BC, 530-some BC. Okay? It wasn't written at the time of Moses. Okay? It's really quite a story, and I couldn't believe that there wasn't some kind of evidence that there was some kind of support for this, because how could all of these people be bamboozled all these years? Right. I got a hold of a guy named Thomas L. Thompson at the University of Copenhagen, and I read one of his books called Mythic Israel. And you can't believe how small the print is in that book. It's insanely small and very, very boring.
Is
and
it a big book?
It's a little book that's so thick and so boring. But I waded through that until I found kind of what I was looking for, and I contacted him. And I said, look, am I reading this wrong, or am I safe in saying that there was no ancient Israel, no Cecil B. DeMille type ancient Israel with its headquarters in Jerusalem prior to the 6th century BC? And he said, he wrote me an email back, and the email was in the smallest font you could. I don't know how he did it, and it went on, and I scrolled on and on and on, and but I got to the bottom, and he said, "Well, I guess I'm not answering your question directly." He says, "Oh yes, you are very safe with saying that. You could even push it ahead to 250 BC."
Wow, see, I never really made that connection.
Yeah. So here, I got the quote right in front of me here. I just dug it up, if you want to. In writing about the historical development of Palestine between 1250 and 586 BCE, all the traditional answers given for the origin and development of Israel have had to be discarded. The patriarchs of Genesis were not historical. The assertion that Israel was already a people before entering Palestine, whether in these stories or in those of Joshua, have no historical foundation. No massive military campaign of invading nomadic Israelites ever conquered Palestine. There was never an ethnically distinct Canaanite population whom the Israelites displaced. There was no period of the judges in history. No empire ever ruled a united monarchy from Jerusalem. No ethnically coherent Israelite nation ever existed at all in history. Neither Jerusalem nor Judah ever shared an identity with Israel before the rule of the Hasmoneans in the Hellenistic period, and that's approximately 250 BC. Michael Woods, you know, the British documentarian and historian,
yeah,
that does marvelous In Search of the Queen of Sheba and In Search of this and In Search of that. Well, he had a BBC series called In Search of the Queen of Sheba, and of course the Queen of Sheba myth goes hand in hand with King Solomon. So that's what he starts off, and I'm going, oh, damn it. He's going to pull out some piece of historical evidence, going to make my whole book fall apart. And
when it just got to the printers.
It just got to the printer. I was getting ready to say, hold the presses, they found a belt buckle. You know? And so he goes first, in order to, we first hear about the Queen of Sheba in the Bible and where she comes to visit King Solomon. So let's look for King Solomon. And I'm going, oh, gee, here it comes, you know. And so he goes to Tel Aviv University, and he interviews a professor about King Solomon, who's supposedly the Tel Aviv University's big authority. And he says, well, tell me about King Solomon. And he goes, and he laughs. And he goes, no. He says, not in history. And Michael Woods laughs, and he says, not in history? What do you mean by that? And he says, Solomon David, just a legend. Just a legend, no history. And I go, whew, you know, wow. And then he goes to the University of Jerusalem, talks with another guy who's a Bible scholar. Okay, and I say, oh, okay, this guy's here we go. And he says, well, tell us about King Solomon, and tell us about the historical King Solomon. And he says, that I cannot do because Solomon did not exist in history. Okay, now, why are people killing each other over a deed of land supposedly given to them by God himself, when the whole story of the giving of that deed,
it's all made up.
Is all made up.
Exactly. That's something that I've covered on this show. I don't even know how many times, Lon, and it creates such a backlash in any community, even people that really enjoy the show and email me every week. They get very put off by that topic, and I think a lot of it has to do with what we call education, more so indoctrination, and learning, or being indoctrinated, not learning, and being indoctrinated into these ideas about World War II and what was done to the Jews over time,
right,
gaining
sure.
that sympathy. I mean, obviously what you're doing here and what you did in your book, it's been out for a while, but did you get any type of like anti-Semitic backlash from any community? No.
Perhaps if the book was more popular, if it sold a few more copies, I'd probably get some. backlash. But no, and as a matter of fact, I've delivered my lecture on the series to Masonic groups and Masonically sponsored lectures all over the world, and there really is no argument. You cannot argue on an empirical level the existence. A few years back, they found some kind of a clay thing that said something of the house of David, and there was a big, this finally proves that David existed. Oh boy, and but it proves absolutely nothing. Okay, House of David. They use the term house in a different way. There's plenty of people named Dawood, and it's likely that all of this stuff had some sort of scrap of historical. There probably was, a tribal king of some kind that whose legend could easily be inflated into such a thing like this, But the point is, our whole idea of all of that is just not so, and it is the most dangerous secret in the world. It still is the most dangerous secret in the world. Can you imagine how upset Islamists would be, because they're based on this book too? It pulls the plug on everything.
Yeah, it just destabilizes the status quo.
Yes, and it requires a level of maturity, even in each individual,
exactly,
to swallow it. Okay, and you have to more or less say, is your view of God big enough to take a hit like this? Or is it so small that a small little idiot like Lon Duquette can dig up evidence that it's not so? Is it that fragile? Are you on that shaky of ground that your entire spiritual investment can be destroyed by the lack of one belt buckle? It's what it comes,
right.
What it comes right down to.
Or the intention to write one paragraph on a historical figure.
Yeah. So that's that. The name of the book is The Key to Solomon's Key, and I think it's, I'm looking right here, I got them all down. I'm looking here at 6 copies of it in 6 different languages, 7 if you count English. It is it is my most popular book internationally. It's the most...
and it's on Amazon. I know it's available through CCC Publishing as well. Anywhere else?
Right.
Barnes & Noble, I'm guessing?
Oh, yeah, Barnes & Noble and any place that books are sold. I'm sure you can get it at Walmart.
Yeah, I don't know about Walmart.